I wanted to share 4 stories with you. The first starts at a bus stop. Who here knows that bus stop life? Who remembers having that monthly bus pass? Yeah, the monthly bus pass. That was a big deal, getting the monthly, right? Not because you graduated from the weekly to having the full monthly. Part of that bus stop life, you're watching people go by and they're watching you, because people work on the same schedule. So you're out there every morning at the same time. They're driving by on the way to work, same time. You actually start to see the routines in the universe around you. And the worst part of bus stop life is when it rains. If you know, you know. I am a freshly graduated high school senior at this internship at Price Waterhouse, now Price Waterhouse Coopers, and I have to be suited, and I'm at the bus stop, and it's raining. And there is this beautiful red Mercedes that rolls by regularly, and I can see the brother driving it. I see him almost every day. I'm looking for it. The day it was raining, he stopped. He said, "Get in." He saw me. He took a moment and was the Good Samaritan and said, "Let me give you a ride." I'm 18 years old. I'd never been in a Mercedes-Benz before. So this was a whole new world of aspiration. It was a good Benz. It was real. And his Rolex and his custom suit. And there was a piece of this material world that was just aspirational for me at that point in my life. But what was more impactful was that 25 minutes that we spent today together. He broke it all down. Young man, this is how you succeed in college. Young man, here's how you get an internship so that you can get that job. When you get that job, here are the things you're supposed to do. In that 25 minutes that he gave a kid at the bus stop a ride, he poured into me in a way that I still remember to this day. Oliver Bird was a vice president at Mellon Bank. He did not have to stop for me, but he made the choice to stop for me. And it wasn't a message about materialism. It was a message about possibilities. The second story that I had for you today was after I finished graduate school. My wife and I had probably been married 2 years at that point. Our daughter Rachel was a newborn. She was still in diapers. You know, I took a leave of absence from US Steel so that I could go to graduate school, finish the degree. Time for me to go back. I really decided to go back. So I get a call from Greg Spencer in Human Resources, who was a friend and mentor to me. And Greg shared with me that your next assignment's going to be in Atlanta. We're going from Lawrence, Kansas to Atlanta, Georgia. Understand what that means? Atlanta was my wife's hometown. And as you can imagine, I like to say that's the second happiest I've ever seen her. But I realized she was going home with her baby. And as you can imagine, we told the family, we're coming. Next day, I get another call. Well, Ken, what do you think about going perhaps to New York or New Jersey instead? Atlanta's not going to work out. We had a plan. What happened in the space of 24 hours, Greg? Well, the sales manager in Atlanta doesn't believe that a Black man can sell in Georgia and that his customers will accept you. And so he doesn't think it's fair to you to put you in that situation. And so we want to do what's best for you and move you to someplace else where you may be more accepted. As you can imagine, that did not go over very well. And it didn't go over very well with Greg. At the time, I'm just stewing in Lawrence trying to figure out where am I going next. While I'm doing that, my dear friend, he's running through US Steel. He was a director of HR This got escalated to the CEO. And God bless it, at the end of it, the CEO of US Steel said, Ken's going to Atlanta. If I need to go to Atlanta with him, I will go. And anybody that doesn't want to buy from Ken doesn't want to buy from us. That is allyship at its best. The point in the story is not about executive lean-in. It's really about Greg Spencer, who didn't have to put all of his chips in for me. He could have just as simply said, you know, the game's the game, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, and I'm sorry, and, you know, life goes on, you'll be fine in New Jersey. No, he went all the way to the mat to accelerate and develop talent that he was committed to. Fourth story, General Mills. How many of you remember Gracie? Little child. Here's the story. They had an idea in Cheerios about doing a Cheerios commercial that was heart healthy. They found the cutest little child in the world. And there was a reality that that child's parents are probably mixed race because they live in Minnesota. They know what that looks like. And so they found a white actress and they found a black actress and they shot the commercial and it was beautiful. Cheerios are heart healthy. You got to eat Cheerios. Poured it on her daddy. Daddy, eat your Cheerios. It's beautiful. And then the letters started to come. At that time, I was leading diversity at General Mills, and the stack of letters and the hate and the bile that we got because we saw America for what it was, and that mixed race couples and their children had value and they had a place in our society too, and they're like us. Can't we just see them and respect them? There were parts of the country that weren't ready for that. Literally, there was a stack of letters in my office, and the call center had the phone ringing off the hook. What is that child doing on the air? I had the good fortune to work for Ken Powell, who was the CEO at that time. And Ken, he's like a college professor. He thinks things very thoroughly, and he has the world's biggest heart. And Ken didn't swear, but he said, okay, if that's what we're going to do. We ran a Super Bowl commercial with Gracie and her family. It was the first time General Mills had run a Super Bowl commercial in 10 or 15 years. It cost millions of dollars. And while it was about the love of Gracie and the effectiveness of the commercial, it was also about Ken making a point. Look, y'all, this is how we live. And it's this notion of allyship is wonderful, but allyship plus action equals conviction. And what we need is people that are convicted. Fourth story. I am the master of the universe. Back in the day, I spent my first 9 years in recruiting at General Mills. I started as a recruiting manager, ultimately ran all of recruiting for the company. I knew how to recruit. I could convince somebody from Tallahassee, Florida to move to Minneapolis, and I did it regularly. I would go to Harvard Business School and pass judgment on these MBAs like they were nothing. I was a master of the universe. I knew my craft. And then I got a new boss. And my new boss was a lot. He was a lot. And for the first time in like 10 years, I was like actively thinking about exiting the company. I want to tell you that even bad bosses have a gift for you. Everybody in your life is not going to be beautiful. So, you learn lessons from the bad as well as the good. But there's one lesson that man left with me. It was this notion of think different. And think different at the time was the logo of Apple. And it was their whole challenge to just change your mindset. There was a reality that at that time, I was the master of the universe in a world where recruiting meant going to campuses and doing career fairs and collecting resumes and people posting on monster.com. Half y'all don't even know what I'm talking about. It was a new era of online and social media and a whole new universe of tools that I wasn't even worried about because my game was tight. And he taught me that if you want to stay at the top of the game, you always have to be thinking about how do you deconstruct your own game before somebody does it for you. So we got these 4 ideas. Community, are you your brother's keeper? Conviction, are you going to go that extra mile? Career allyship, how do you lift people up? How do you help them succeed in their careers? And this final notion about change is a part of everything that we do. It's the air that we breathe. That's been part of my career journey. But more importantly, what we're here today to celebrate is the journey of TC BANDD. And that has actually been the story of TC BANDD as well. You got to think about 10 years ago, these cats were, chair of their employee resource groups. They had done their duty as the employee resource group president, Black champions over at Cargill with Eric, and they were still looking for an opportunity to serve. And what they did was build a community that we still get to enjoy today. What they've done is find a way to pour into all of us so that we can get the playbook, the code book, so that we could accelerate and achieve our possible. They did it with conviction. And what I love most about TC BANDD, whether you call it for us, by us, unapologetically Black, radically, look, this is us, for us, about us in a way that is so authentic that it is one of one in the universe. There is nothing like this model in its sincerity in addressing the needs of African-American and African descendant professionals. And then the last thought I would leave you is that TC BANDD has navigated the change, right? And so 10 years ago, get in a room, give people lunch. It was innovative, it was breakthrough. But how they've been able to go to scale, go to different platforms, go global, and survive the pandemic when so many other initiatives fail and crash and burn, is just a testament to their grit, to their ingenuity, and to their imagination. And so we are incredibly appreciative of not just the Erics and Drenell, but to all of the people that have served on the committees and done the work to allow us to be here today. So now you get the applause. So what does this got to do with me? I want to now transition to talking more about you and how all this relates to your particular journey. And I really wanted to put these 2 ideas of change and conviction together. I want you to absorb this for a minute. We had a consultant working on unconscious bias at General Mills, Nikki Lanier, and she dropped this message. Never in human history has there been a civilization that was diverse, equitable, and inclusive. How does that hit you? Give me a thought. How do you receive this? Truth? We're not, and we're not there yet. It's interesting that when you think about what we're trying to create through the work of DEI, it's actually an unnatural act. That people live in their sameness, and so moving them to a place where they respect and value everyone in the same way they want to be respected and valued, that's a big trick that we're asking people to do. The second notion is that the world that we're living in is a very complex one right now. We've got the twin towers of polarization. Whether you're liberal or conservative, we live in a country now where there are two very different worldviews, to the point that we have two different sets of facts. Science is dead, facts are gone. And depending on what you want to hear, you can find a source that will give it to you and constantly reaffirm your worldview. On the other end is this notion of, and the workplace is totally different, right? You know, we're on the other side of COVID. I grew up in a world where there was a pension waiting for you, and the goal was to find a great company and spend 30 years there and retire. You live in a world that is purely free agency. What you gonna do for me today? Well, what you gonna do for me today? And if it don't work out, then you're gonna each go your separate ways. There is no love, there is no loyalty. Buck up, because it's full contact. And one of the gifts of COVID is that it allowed us to work flexibly and reimagine the way that work is done. But there's some behaviors in the workplace today that are really unique. I feel free to say anything about anything. I'm emboldened to speak my truth authentically. It is a gift from Donald Trump that anybody thinks they can say anything to anybody about anything at any time. And at the same time, we have concerns about psychological safety and mental health and how I receive that message when I get it. I don't want to call it fragility, but there's a sensitivity that is higher than there's ever been before. And so you've got both of these in the same place at the same time. And it's messy. And thank God y'all all working from home, so y'all don't got to talk to each other, because that's the only way we're making it. And so we live in this world now where the rate of change is faster than it's ever been before, augmented by social media, augmented by artificial intelligence. And at the same time, people are locked in their worldview based on their values. There's not a lot of wiggle room. And just in case you didn't know it, there's a November an election about a year from now. And between now and then, let the shenanigans begin. So what do you do, right? So I'm trying to navigate in this space and be able to bring change and really actually move the needle. Well, three things I want to leave you with. One is this notion of know your facts, do your work. Too often it's just very easy to take our feed as factual instead of actually doing the work ourselves. And so if we want to champion a position, we really have to do our own research at a level like we've never done before, because we can't trust the truth. Secondly, we've got to be willing to challenge our own assumptions and our own worldview. You know what? Both sides actually can be right about a part of it. And so you've got to be able to at least step into the other person's point of view enough to have empathy and understanding about why they believe the way they believe and what's the motivation behind the way they believe. To do that, you've got to put in some effort and actually talk to people. So connecting with others, collaborating with others, allowing them to pressure test your ideas is going to be a necessity if you're going to be able to make it on the other side. And then, oh, by the way, just so that we're all clear, nobody knows what's going to happen. Everybody's got a theory. So give yourself some grace when it doesn't quite turn out the way that you thought it would, but be prepared to make the pivot, because something's going to happen. It's the chance that it's going to play out exactly as you envisioned it is next to nothing. And so every time you sit at that table, you need to have plan A, plan B, and plan C, and have thought through what the other side of that table is going to do in the play. I spent a lot of time thinking about brands, and I want you to absorb this one too. I spent a lot of my time dealing with people's shenanigans, Bud Light, Target, People find ways to get upset about everything. I hear from the right, I hear from the left. I'm now having the privilege of working at a company that serves Christians. What does Christian actually mean? Everybody kind of comes to that with a different definition, right? So it gets complicated out there. So this is a quote about brands, and it was lifted from Forbes during that time of Bud Light and the controversy over Pride. But the heart of the message, though, is what do you believe in? What are your values? And what is it that's non-negotiable for you that you actually will stand up for and push your chips in, like Greg Spencer did for me at US Steel? It is very easy for us to float through society right now with thoughts and prayers and an occasional post, but what are you actually willing to do? I can't answer that for you, but I'm here to tell you that the test is coming. There's going to be a moment where you're going to have to be very clear about which side of an issue you're on, and you're going to have to be willing to stand up and invest in it. Now, I've given you a lot of darkness, so I will balance it out with hope. The arc of the moral universe is wide and swings to justice. We're going to be okay. And it's true. If we look at American history, we swing out, we swing back, we swing out, we swing back. But that pendulum is continually moving forward. But there's a quote that you don't see a lot of from another king who actually had something that was critical for you to hear. Struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. So there was perhaps some naive notion that during the 60s, the John Lewises and the Martin Luther Kings had won this for us. And then you millennial babies, you had your Obama, and he was good and we like Obama. Well, the reality is that every generation, if you want to keep your freedom, you need to buckle up, Buttercup, because the struggle is not going anywhere. And even though we've made progress, if you want to maintain the gain, it's going to require your personal conviction to be able for us to live in the society that we want to live in. All right, career and community. I've done these things so many times. Like as I was putting this together, I was like looking at the old decks, and I realized y'all don't want to see the old decks. But there are some ideas that I think ring through consistently in all of this work. Part of this is the reality of the inequity of corporate America. That if you look at the representation as people come in early career and the representation at the top of the house, you can see that some parts of our population, white men, grow disproportionately to their representation, and other parts of our population, particularly women, decline in leadership as they move through the funnel. This is the pipeline challenge. I'm here to tell you that this is better than it's ever been before, but in a perfect world, all things being equal, these lines are all going to be flat. That if you start out with 25% on the front end, you end up with 25% on the C-suite. That's the job to be done. This is a lift from McKinsey's Women in the Workplace report, which is a wonderful read. Community. This is an income slide, but I literally could have done health, education, high school attainment, home ownership, pick your poison. The reality is that the income disparities, the social experience disparities for Black and descendants of Africans is very different than their white peers. This is the world that we live in. We have to fix this, and we have to find a way to do it. Well, how do we do that? It's the playbook. We always talk about the playbook and the code book. If I give you the playbook and the code book and you follow it, you will succeed. There was that lovely young woman from Wells Fargo this morning. I sat there, I listened, I acted. Now look at me now, 3X, right? Follow the playbook. The challenge is that not everybody gets the playbook. Not everybody's in this room to be able to hear, how do we play through this? How do we actually deliver? The first thing we have to get right is our mindset. So this purple box, past behavior is an indicator of future success, right? Any recruiters in the house? Anybody who ever done an interview as a hiring manager? That's what we tell you. That's what we beat into you, that what you've done in the past will be the predictor of what you do in the future. But there's this more broad thought about, I'm not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. That despite my circumstances in the past, even some of the choices that I may have made in the past, despite the trauma that I might have had in the past, what I choose to do will determine my altitude from this point forward. Our paths are not written in stone. We have the opportunity to shape and mold our futures. So I wanted to share 5 thoughts for you. These are the 5 words that matter most. If you kind of like boil the ocean, here are the things that we will continually come back to. Whether you are looking at your career as a corporate soldier or as an entrepreneur about to launch your ship, or whether you just want to make an impact in your community, these 5 ideas keep coming back up again and again. This first is performance is the cost of entry. You have to get the job done, you have to exceed expectations. That is your price of admission. And we come from a framework that says, if I ask you to do A, B, and C, and you do A, B, and C, then you are complete, and therefore you deserve to get rewards. And the reality is, well, actually, I meant for you to do A, B, and C, and take it to D and E, and find a way to eliminate the need to do B altogether. You have to be committed to your performance and differentiating yourself by the work that you do. And oh, by the way, as I look around this room at the financial genius, at the marketing genius, as the HR geniuses, can our community need, does the community need that as well? Yeah. Can our institutions, whether it's a church or the Urban League, benefit from your genius and your expertise? So think through, how am I sharing all that I've learned with my community in a way that's going to make a difference? Performance, investment. I got a dear friend. She was a senior manager. She was probably 45 years old. And she said, I'm getting my MBA. I'm like, why are you getting your MBA? I need my MBA. She got her MBA. She did the work. She worked overtime, right? She did the 40 hours a week, and then she went to school at night, did that for 2.5 years, got her MBA. And suddenly with that degree, she was able to do a director job and a senior director job. And now she sits as a chief diversity officer. She never would have been able to get through those doors if she hadn't invested in herself. Now, I'm not saying everybody go out and get an MBA. That's not the message. The message is, how are you investing in yourself? Because if you're not investing in yourself, ain't nobody else going to invest in you. So what are you doing to build your skills and sharpen your saw, right? What are you reading? And we know that what you have available to you on social media, and you've got to read a lot to actually get to the truth. But who are you watching? Because it's what people do that really matters, not what they say. And so if you're like me, you are always watching people's behavior and taking lessons from that. You know, we need to listen more than we talk, and we need to be committed to this learning agility as a way of life. I think we've done ourselves a disservice that we've kind of said educational attainment is, I get this degree, I get this degree, I get this degree, I'm done. And that's not quite the way that it works. That the world that we're living is changing at such a fast pace that your commitment to learning has to be just a part of how you're wired. How many of you are going to the gym more than 2 or 3 times a week? Yeah. How many of y'all going to church? How many of y'all are taking a minute to read for a couple hours? Well, okay, well, I'm preaching to the choir. I'll leave it alone. On the community side, while we also need your genius, we also need your time. It's wonderful that you may post your support and give your thoughts and prayers, but we need you to write a check. We talked all about financial wellness and empowerment. We need you to write a check so our institutions can thrive. We need you to write a check so our churches have what they need to deliver their messages. We need you to write a check so we can get people that are elected that share our values. In case you missed it, there is a Minnesota miracle that we're living in right now, that because we have the governor's house as well as the House and the Senate, we are not as crazy as our neighbors. That is because people rolled up their sleeves and got folks elected. And oh, by the way, some of those folks getting elected could be sitting in this room. Are you just here to show up? Or are you here to win? However you define winning. And if you're here to win, then you got to be all in. And being all in means that you're going to have to sacrifice. But aren't you worth sacrificing for? So before we do all that construct about being all in, though, there's a piece of work that you have to do about what is it that you really want? What are you trying to do? If you're trying to be comfortable, and there's nothing wrong with being comfortable, then that's one way that you show up in the workplace. If you're trying to win it and be on the C-suite, then know that that's going to require an entirely different level of commitment sustained over time. It brings its rewards. It also has its cost. And are you going to be willing to pay that cost? And then I also need you to decide something else. So how many of you are not originally from the Twin Cities? You in the Twin Cities now. This is home. Look at your driver's license. You live here. Don't be going home for the beauty salon. Build a life here. We need you to invest in this community and really understand that this community is what we choose to make it. Going back to TC BANDD, when this launched, they envisioned a community where people could get together in this way. What can you imagine that can make this place a better place to live? So while I appreciate that, you will always have your favorite football franchise and home will always be home, I need you to really invest and commit to this community. Mentor. Oliver Bird didn't have to share a word with me. He could have just drove on by and parked in that executive garage. He stopped for me. So if you want to succeed, then you definitely need people that are pouring into you. So your board of advisors, you have to find mentors, you have to find sponsors, although the fact is sponsors find you, and you have to find coaches so that you can get to that next level of performance. You need connectiveness to be able to win, but also, who are you pouring into? Who are you putting an arm around? Now, I don't need you picking up kids on the street. No, Ken told me to pick somebody up. I picked them up. They jacked me. They stole my car. No, we ain't trying to do all that. I need you to use good judgment. I use good judgment. But let's just start with our children. Let's start with our nieces and nephews. Let's start with all those little cousins. Let's think about all them little kids we see at church. Maybe those kids on the block. Can you give them a book? Can you ask them, what do you want to do when you grow up? Oh, you want to be a doctor? Well, let's talk about how somebody becomes a doctor. And I know a doctor. Can I introduce you to that doctor? Who are we putting our arm around, both in our community and actually on our jobs? Because in this whole kind of mentoring, sponsoring, coaching model, you get in return what you put in. It's not just pulling from other people and having them invest in you. You have to invest in others as well. Relationships. Nobody wins alone. This is a team sport. You know, we talk about marathons, we talk about sprints. This is a Tough Mudder. If you know what a Tough Mudder is, it's fire and mud and blood, and you got to climb fences, and it's a team sport. Corporate America is a team sport. And so if you're trying to navigate through this on your own, there's going to be a limit to how far you make it. And you're going to be wondering why that happened. And oh, by the way, I'm allowed to say, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And you can find friends in a lot of places. And so for many of us, we come with these blinders on about, I don't want to talk about cabins and up north and what the hell is that about? I don't know. Why y'all running up there? I don't understand. Why do you drive 3.5 hours when you can just like drive to the airport and go someplace nice and then come? I don't know. It's a thing. It's a thing. 23 years, I still ain't figured it out. We have to diversify our networks if we hope to succeed. Who all knows their next door neighbor? Some of y'all ain't raising your hand. We've been conditioned to stay in our little box. We got to break those boxes down because those neighbors have a gift for you. When you say hello to that person on the street, they might have a gift for you. Yeah. My wife was from Atlanta, and we were living in Pittsburgh. And in Atlanta, you speak to people on the street. She's walking up and down the street saying hi to people. She's like wondering why people don't speak back. Okay. And I had a financial advisor who he's walking down the street, runs into her, they introduce, she says hi, he says hi back. Next thing they're talking, and then they play to who they know, and it turns out we both know me, right? That financial advisor called me up to say, in my life, I've known many women. I've known some great ones and some bad ones. And at this point in my life, I've appreciated that I've let some good ones go. And I'm here to tell you, that's a good one. Don't let that one go. So, 22-year-old Ken Charles, who was suave. I was terribly handsome, y'all. I'm like, I like this girl, but I'm only 12. But it marinated. And I'm like, yeah, you got a point. Because like I'm running down the checklist, and like my wife was a ballet major and a computer science dual degree. My wife is bad. What the hell? We get engaged. What the hell? It'll be 35 years in 2 more weeks. If she hadn't talked to him, if he hadn't talked to me, knows where I'd be out in these streets. Know your neighbor. Talk to your neighbor. All right. Last one. This is my tombstone slide. When I'm dead and gone, they're still going to be showing this slide. The glass half empty, the glass half full. Is it half empty? Is it half full? Are you a pessimist? Are you an optimist? That is really driven by your life experience, how your mind is wired. The point is that you own the glass. It is your glass. So you get to decide what you want to do with it. If it's not full, fill it. Make the choice about how you want your life to be and do the work to achieve it. Regardless of what happened before. Somebody might have come in, drank half your glass, now you got a half and you mad. You still have the control of your glass and you can determine what you want your life to be. It's the power of choice that it just trumps trauma. It trumps your circumstances. Your commitment to yourself and to your community will shape the world around you and the life that you will live. So that's all I got for you today. Well, I would love to, can we take a couple questions at least? Yeah. All right, let's do it.
Are there any questions for the Ken Charles?
Oh, Lord.
Oh, you
Oh,
I don't know what to do with that. I've thought about it, but I got a job again, so.
got a question right
I know.
good afternoon, everyone. I've enjoyed your spiel. For someone who does DEI work, it was good. For someone who does DEI work, I know you talked about 2024 and what a year that's going to be. And I know that DEI is going to be on the forefront. What advice would you give to people who are in the field, especially with employees feeling so bold to tell you how they really feel?
So thank you for your question. And I like to tell people this is the last DEI job I'm gonna do. Because people are a trip right now. What I'm hearing is that we need to elevate our thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, recognize the external environment that we're in and that those words are being received as toxic, they're being weaponized, and evolve our language into something that still delivers the outcomes of creating a workforce that's inclusive and diverse, but frees itself from the lexicon and the toolbook of the last 35 years. I receive that in that spirit of change and think different. What matters most is getting to the outcome. And there's more than one way to get there. I receive that. There's another school of thought that says we have been far too polite. We have been giving way too many hugs and not enough slaps upside the head. That the opposition has no fear about getting in our face and taking it to us. And meanwhile, through our empathy and kindness, we're trying to embrace them and help them be a better person. There's a little bit of the warrior spirit that needs to get back in the DEI business. We've got the business case that says this is a value creator. That's been proven over time. So why are we still talking about this? And why are we allowing people to act out? We need to drive this with an intensity that matches the opposition that we're facing. Now, I haven't figured that out yet. I think every company is different, situations are different, and particularly in the post-George Floyd era, right? Where, the promises were essentially, 40 acres and a mule 2.0, right? People are all across that spectrum. So you got to know who you're working with as you're trying to figure out what the strategy is. But that's the two call outs that I would give you as you try to think about the work. There's one in the back.
Hi, so this does not particularly resonate with the HR/personnel side of DEI, but it actually speaks to the lawsuits that have been out there against people like Fearless Funds for women of color. And there was a recent one with the SBA. How do you think DEI is going to play a role in trying to curb that in the future?
if you follow the thread, we lost the Supreme Court. And so for the next 10 to 15 years, maybe 20 years, we have no idea what's coming through that house. And the only way to change the game is to change the composition of the court. And it doesn't seem to be intestinal fortitude to say, we're going to increase the size so we can have more balance, right? So we are on a trajectory that is not a positive one. We saw it this summer with SCOTUS decisions about affirmative action in higher education. And then, oh, by the way, you know, that supplier diversity stuff that you do, I don't know if you should really be doing that. And then I think probably half of the Fortune 500 got a lovely letter in the mail from 11 attorneys general from red states that were telling us, you know, y'all shouldn't be doing that recruiting, that DEI training, that supplier diversity stuff. You know that that's all history. It's not. But if we listen to those arguments, we can go into the turtle shell. So what I'm seeing is essentially a polarization around the commitment to diverse communities. You've got some folks that are all in. They've been all in for 35 years. They may not be perfect, but they're grinding and trying to get better every day. Those people are still going to soldier on. And you've got some other folks that may not have ever been committed in the first place, may have discovered DEI when George Floyd was murdered. And now 3 years later, and you know, the guilty have been punished, so we can like go back to normal now, right? They're ready to put it all back in the closet. They're trying to seize this as their rationale in the voice of risk management that, okay, we can't take positions on anything, and these programs are not the way that we want to go and do business in the future. I think it comes down to understanding the organization that you're a part of. And with our free agency, if it's me, I'm voting for a company that sees me and supports me versus one that tolerates me. And for some of y'all gonna create your own organizations, and hopefully those will be intentionally diverse and inclusive. All the way in the back.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your words of wisdom. As you know, and I think a lot of us do, Minnesota kind of has this habit of picking like 1 or 2 Black people per industry and like shining the spotlight on them for like maybe 2 or 3 years and then moving on to the next person. And people can disagree with this. This has just been kind of my experience. But I was just kind of thinking about, I mean, your name comes up a lot all the time, along with a smaller group of people, but how do you manage being kind of like the only, or words of wisdom that you have for people who are trying to manage how to kind of be one of the only in their space that is continually kind of being pushed to the forefront in a way that doesn't necessarily wear you out, but also continues to help you to pull the seats at the table that you have access to?
Wow, okay. Good question. Let's start with this notion of you get your moment in the sun. And I call out the Kirby Puckett effect, that this city, this community will love you until it doesn't. And I've seen it happen. I'm gonna name names, but I've watched people rise up and then they get ghosted. It's part of the culture in this environment. And I think there's some truth to that. If you get too close to the sun, you get burned. And if you get too big, you start to attract attention and draw fire, and that can be counterproductive. And then you're done, right? As someone who's been a part of this community for 23 years, I would say that there has been a shift in that old model where people would join a company and spend 25, 30 years. There were models of talent formation at General Mills, for example, where you had a Kim Nelson or a Mark Belton who joined as an associate marketing manager straight out of B school to marketing manager, marketing director, division president, C-suite. They're part of this community for 25, 30 years before they retired. And, you know, Laisha Ward has been a part of this community for 30 years. The people that were of that generation, I don't think we're building them anymore, because that's not the way talent works anymore. You go to a place for a while and then you move on to a bigger gig, right? But what I would say for those folks that were in that old model, they were committed to bringing people behind them And they were very authentic in who they were along their journey, and who they were at the beginning and who they were at the end. They were the same people. Now they had maybe 5, 6 times the earnings, but so where do we stand today? For me personally, it's about the work, and I can focus on taking assignments that are of interest to me intellectually and where I can have impact. Why am I at Thrivent? Thrivent's an interesting place to be, Ashley. We got work to do on the DEI side that's like foundational. People are well-intentioned, but not well-equipped. But I also get the opportunity to work on the corporate responsibility side, where I'm able to channel dollars and drive impact. The combination of those two, it's a win for me. I'm also at a point in life where I ain't got to work for nobody. What did you call it, Kofi? The DFAG scale? Like, yeah. So the coaching that I would give you is 2 parts. One is you want to get your career to a place where you ain't got to do nothing you don't want to do with nobody you don't want to do it with. You have to have the freedom and flexibility to do you. Now, I'm in my late 50s. I'll be 60 next year. The decisions that you can make as a 20-something that will set you up to be completely free in your late 40s and 50s, that means that you're making those investments now. That means you're buying that insurance now. That means you're buying the real estate now. That means you're managing your career and your lifestyle in a way so that you can be free someday. The second piece that I would give you as advice is do you, because that's the only thing that you're going to have in the end. When you look in that mirror, you need to be confident that the choices I've made, I am comfortable with. And this person that I've become is actually somebody that I like and accept. If you find yourself straying from that, then you're going to get lost in the woods. That's how you're going to make it through the forest that you're going to have to go through. All right, I think I got time for one more. I can hear you.
Tips or any resources, not how to actually find a really a good professional mentor?
Okay, let's split mentorship and sponsorship. On sponsorship, you want to sponsor, perform. You want to sponsor, start networking with people. And you will start to build a light, and that light will draw attention, and folks 2 levels up will start to see you and say, well, who's that? I might need to spend a minute to get to know who that person is. And the next thing you know, people are talking about you in rooms that you don't even know about, right? On the mentoring side of things, there's the question of what is it that you actually want to accomplish through the mentoring? Is that I need to understand how to navigate through this organization because these people are crazy? All right, then you need to talk to people that are new to the company or people that have been here for a long time so that you can understand the culture and the way things get done. Or is it that you're looking for a mentor who's going to build your technical skills and expertise, take you to another level, show you the stuff you don't know how, help you figure out those pivot tables. I don't know what a pivot table is. I don't know that, right? And so you've got to get focused on what you want in exchange from those mentors. And sometimes what you want in a mentor is just someplace to just be able to breathe. Think about the outcome that you want. And then once you've got that outcome in mind, then you can go shopping for the right individuals that can give that to you and allow you to move ahead. Okay.
Individuals.
Yes.
I be under the impression that that one person just had it all. And Laisha Ward is the person who schooled me. She said, oh, no. You have whatever you want, get a mentor for that. If you want to, this is the goal that you have, someone who's done that. If you're wondering, whatever it is, you can have more than one mentor. Again,
Well-
so the summary is you do not have to have just one mentor. That you will actually learn more by having multiple mentors that are helping you to achieve different goals or emulate those behaviors.
Said differently, you got different friends for different reasons. You got the friend you go to Bible study with. You got the friend you go to the club with. Different friends for different purposes. I think I've got one more slide out there.
We had one more question back here. Has been patiently waiting.
Okay.
Hello, this one's from online. This one's
Oh.
from James Miller. How are we / should we be looking at DEI beyond corporate structures and organizations? I'm of the mind that the precursor to it starts within our own neighborhoods to ensure we're building and establishing sustainable inroads there, specifically for those areas that often get missed or are forgotten by institutions and so on.
I think over the past 10 or 15 years, we've started to think of DEI as a process. I need to get some employee resource groups. I need to set up a mentoring program. I need to have some metrics. We start getting into this to-do list. And DEI actually is an outcome that we're trying to work towards. And so when you liberate it to say, we want to be a part of organizations at work and in the community that are diverse, then how do you seek those out? And how do you, if you find something that's too homogeneous, how do you bring more diversity to it? How do we make sure that everybody gets treated fairly? That equity word gets people hung up. It just means treating everybody fairly. And then inclusive means that it's welcoming, that everybody is welcome. It's not that hard. But I think that when we kind of get locked into our box, that's when our thinking starts to stagnate, and that we should be thinking about the behaviors that we're trying to drive through other organizations and platforms. One of the reasons why we want you so much to kind of take your corporate experience into the community space is that in some of these areas, the thinking is a little bit more mature, and you can actually give concrete examples about how to actually do it and accomplish what we're setting out to do. All right, I've got one last slide. If it's out there, great. If not, I can do a voiceover. It's not out there. I will do the voiceover. So I hung out my shingle, and for about 1.5 years, I was a consultant, which is lonely. It's lonely. But I had a client, and he shared this with me that it just has always struck me. Everyone is imperfect. Give grace. We're imperfect ourselves. Stay humble. Imperfection isn't the end. Keep learning. Imperfections can be offset. Work together. Strengths overcome weaknesses. Lead well. So we'll leave you on that.